Good evening, Mayor, members of council. This evening, I just want to give you a little bit of overview, kind of where we were before me taking the helm here at Harrisonburg, and kind of where we stand here at HPD of some things that we have changed over the course of the last few months. So upon me taking the reins here, one of the things I came into the organization looking to do is really model ourselves after 21st century policing. And so if you're all familiar with that, there are 6 pillars that are associated with 21st century policing. The first one is building trust and legitimacy. The second one is policy and oversight. The third one is technology and social media. Fourth is community policing and crime reduction. Fifth is training and education. And the last one is officer wellness and safety. So a lot of the things that were already taking place at HPD really dealt with community policing and building those partnerships and building trust and legitimacy. So you had things already in place such as, Shop with a Cop, Secret Santa, Coffee with a Cop. All those things were taking place. But once I got here, one of the things I really wanted to do, and I've been preaching over and over again, is building those partnerships and those relationships with our community. And so that was one of the reasons that we started implementing community walks, so we could get to know individuals. I think those personal relationships are extremely important. And we need to get to know people, not just in their time of crisis, but before those things occur. So you had things like that, directed patrol. We started creating merchant check books where our officers had to go into their various businesses and they would have to sign the book and make sure they get to know the individuals inside that particular location. We created a program last year called Backpack Giveaway, where we gave out over 100 backpacks to our kids out here at Court Square. And we partnered with a group called Mending Fences to do that. And so we were always trying to look for ways in order for us to engage not only our adults, but our youth as well. As you may know, we held the adventure race last year, but it was more than just a race. What we wanted to do was we had our different entities of our organization out there just to show individuals what we do, what those different units do. What does our SWAT team do? What does our crowd civil disturbance unit do? What does our school resource officers do? So it was more like a race, but it was also a display of the things we wanted individuals to know what their police department was all about. So in order to build trust and legitimacy, you also have to be transparent. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to do here as well. Again, transparency as far as the documents that we have in our agency, it wasn't necessarily a fault of individuals that it wasn't done prior to me getting here. As you may well know, we had a very antiquated record management system before I got here, and so it was very hard to pull data from that system. But we've increased our technology. We have a new management system here now. It went up and running in November of 2019, and now a lot of that data that we're able to pull is a lot easier. So that's why you see our use of force data, our policies are online. And we're looking to do even more of that. As we get more accustomed to the system, we're going to try to put our crime data online as well. I think it's important for individuals to know what's going on in their community. So those are some of the things we looked at. I looked at policy. That was the first thing that I tackled when I got here, was looking at policy. And we had some very old policies when I first got here, but we looked at every policy that the police department had. We got rid of some policies, we revamped some, and we created new ones. And that's going to be extremely important as we move forward, because again, policy is what drives us as an organization. So we even with policies, we included individuals in our creation of our policies. So in Virginia Organizing was one of the groups that we met with, and they actually helped us with our immigration guideline policy. We actually sent it to them. They took a look at it. They gave us their input. And there were some changes we made to the policy based on some of the things they wanted. The same thing, we talk about use of force. It was just a couple of weeks ago we had that rally, and again, I took what people said about some of our use of force policies and the languages in our policy, and we changed some things that we didn't need it in our policy. So the intervention piece, where it's mandatory that individuals intervene when they see somebody using excessive force, that's been added. And we also included a line in our policy that talks about the sanctity of life being the utmost importance in any use of force situation. So all those things will come from recommendations from citizens. And again, I'm not opposed to getting those calls and getting those recommendations from our citizens. I created a recruitment unit when I first got here. We didn't have an actual unit that went out and recruited individuals into our organization. One of the things that we have in our organization is we get individuals in our organization that actually apply. And sometimes you got to go out and look for the folks that you want to come into your organization. So I created a recruitment unit. Now, again, our success has not been where I wanted to be. But again, I think we're making that effort in order to go out and try to attract those individuals to come into our department. Fit team, just give you a couple of things that I've changed. I created a fit team, which is a force investigation team. And basically what they do is they will be the ones that investigate any officer-involved shooting, any critical incident that leads to serious injury. And one of the reasons I created that team is composed of our detectives and our professional standards unit. But I created that team in order for us to be consistent in what we do. Every time we go out, you have the same individuals that are looking at that particular scenario and making their assessment and providing that report. We talk about wellness of our officers. We created a peer support team. Sergeant Grubbs leads that team right now, and again, anytime somebody's involved in a critical incident, they have an opportunity to sit down with our peer support team and talk about those things, because again, the welfare of our officers is extremely important as well. Intelligence unit. We really had no intelligence unit when I got here. And intelligence units right now are more critical than anything when you're talking about everything that's going on across the country. So we don't just look at intelligence locally, we look at things that are going on across the country to make sure we keep our finger on the pulse. Going back to use of force, I created a use of force review board. So every use of force that we have is reviewed by a panel. There are 2 citizens on that board, and both citizens have gone through our community police academy. So you have 2 independent individuals that are looking at it. They also look at they look at the body on camera video. They also look at the report itself. And that body has to make a determination of whether that officer was in policy or out of policy. And I did the same thing on an accident review board. I created the accident review board. They do basically the same thing. They look at all police vehicle accidents and they look at all police vehicle pursuits to make a determination of whether that officer was in or out of policy. So those are 2 things those are 2 boards that I actually created when I got here. Revamp the discipline policy. And again, I'm just being honest. Our policies and discipline policy was outdated. We created a different policy to make sure it's more equitable, to make sure that people are getting treated the same when they are disciplined, and it also holds people accountable. As we talk about mental health, every officer is mandated to go through crisis intervention training, which is CIT training, which teaches a lot of de-escalation techniques. And before I got here, it was random. You could sign up if you wanted to. And when I got here, I said, no, that's going to be mandatory, and I've gone through the training myself. So I think it's important for us to make sure that we're handling mental health calls appropriately, because that is one of the areas that we do receive a lot of calls concerning that. We have just become more data-driven based on the records management system we have now. We're looking at more data, trying to make sure we put our resources in the right areas. And again, a lot of our community policing has been thwarted over the last few months due to COVID-19. We just now haven't been able to get out like we want to. We had a lot of plans already in place for the spring and summer that we're just not able to do because of the situation we're in right now. Since the George Floyd incident, one of the things that we felt like we needed to create, we started getting a lot of calls regarding what we should be doing, some recommendations on changes we need to be made. We created a board of 9 individuals that are very diverse from age to different demographics. We met with them last week, a community relations board, and we're basically just going through, gave them a rundown of what HPD is all about, but they're also providing us some information on and recommendations on things that we can improve upon. We had a very good meeting last week. A lot of what they told us is that they didn't know we did all of what we do. And they told us that basically we don't brand ourselves well enough. And so that's one of the areas we're going to have to work hard on as far as the social media aspect of it. We don't put enough information out on what we do, and we need to get better at that. But they also provided some other recommendations for us as well. So we're going to be looking at training as it regards to autism. We do CIT training on mental health. but we're going to be looking to get some training as it pertains to autism. Another thing that we're going to be doing is every incident that occurs across the country, and we just did this with the incident that happened in Georgia, as we do training with all our officers as we go through those scenarios. And so we kind of look at it, and we want everybody to kind of chime in and have a discussion about it. And we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page of where HPD stands in these particular situations. And so we're going to do that for every situation we see across the country that may create that stir. As I was getting more and more calls regarding what we're doing as an agency, I created a frequently asked question page on our Facebook page, just because I couldn't answer everybody. So I said, rather than responding to every call, email, what have you, I just created those responses on our Facebook page so everybody can kind of go through there and kind of see where we stand as an agency. And I will say, lastly, one of the things that we've been working on is becoming an accredited agency. We are on track to do that. I think we'll have that completed before the end of this year, and we've been trying to do this probably for the last 6 years. It's become accredited, and so we're finally trying to reach that goal, and I feel like we're on track to do that before the end of this year. So that's just kind of an overview of where the agency stands now. We're always looking to get better. We've already talked about things that we're going to be trying to do just prepare ourselves for future incidents and future protests. We want to make sure we're prepared, but also making sure that we're handling those situations, as best we can to prevent any harm to our citizens.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Does anybody have any questions for the Chief? Councilman Jones.
Chief, I just wanted to tell you thank you for deciding to come to Harrisonburg. From all accounts that I hear and my personal interactions, everybody enjoys having you here. The ladies and gentlemen of the HPD have always given me good feedback about their relationship with you and how they see the department going. And I would say that 95 or more percent, maybe 99% of the interactions that I hear from the community are always positive, and people are happy that they got someone that will listen and be transparent and someone they can interact with and have a conversation with, even if they're not happy with something or they have different views on how policing should be done. So I just wanted to make sure I started with that and told you that, because that's obviously good news for you to hear. So I hope that you receive that well, and hopefully your team receives that well, because I just don't ever hear any negatives. And like I say, when the negatives come, you guys are willing to tackle them. So I really appreciate that. I also wanted to just ask you, in regards to non-traditional police work, some of the work that maybe should fall under CSB, if you will, when we're looking at, or even something like truancy. I'm not even sure if you deal with that or not. You could elaborate if you got the time, but things when it comes to mental health issues or issues that would probably fall under CSB is, I think, a quicker, easier way to say it. How much of your manpower and time is eaten into that? And are there ways and opportunities that you've seen other police departments tackle that differently? Because I think in an ideal world, you and your team would focus on pure police work and hopefully not have to be involved in some of the sometimes physical situations that come up when it comes to dealing with mental illness. Could you elaborate a little bit on that and maybe let me know what you've seen across the country and what you guys are working with?
So when you say, and again, I would preface to say it's probably best to say items that deal with CSB, because non-traditional, it becomes so, we've been doing it so long now that it's traditional.
That's true.
And I would just say that, and you've not had this discussion, I've had this discussion with my folks. This is not just a Harrisonburg problem, this is a national issue. that we're dealing with when it deals with mental health. You would be surprised at the amount of time that locally we spend dealing with mental health calls and mental health issues. We just had a conversation today about us being able to change the way we operate dealing with mental health. As you may well know, we just had one of my officers that got cut last week dealing with a mental health subject. And so those things are always problematic for us because I've always said we should not be in the mental health field because anytime we deal with mental health, we're bringing a gun, we're bringing a taser, we're bringing OC, and there's always the potential for something to go wrong. And so we have to be a lot smarter about what we're doing. The other issue with that is that we're spending so much time. I just read a report yesterday. We spent 7 hours with someone at the hospital waiting for a bed. Those things take a lot of time, and when we have to do that, or we have to transport somebody to a hospital that may be in Williamsburg or maybe in Petersburg, those are two officers that are not in your community. They're not in Harrisonburg protecting the citizens that they need to protect. And so when you look at something like that, when you look at that trip, that's a lot of time from their shift that they're having to spend with mental health subjects. I don't think we can ever get totally out of the business of mental health, but I do think there needs to be more funding that is put in the mental health field because again, some of the calls that individuals have to go on are dangerous. You have individuals that have weapons, and so you're not just going to send anybody into a mental health call for those. But some of those other mental health calls, I think there are other people that can respond to those without the police being involved, and I think it would minimize the amount of times that force is used that individuals may get harmed. I think that's something globally that just needs to be addressed, and I don't have the answer for that, but I can tell you we spend a lot of time on mental health calls.
Thank you so much. I would just like to mention to my colleagues and ask the city manager for us to strongly consider looking at options in other ways in which we could work with CSB, whether it's looking at creating another department or finding other resources or adding mental health professionals to our whether it's the police department or to another separate entity that can help with these instances, that can make those referrals, that can make those calls, because I firmly believe that HPD shouldn't necessarily be in the line of mental health. Like you said, it's become now traditional, and that's unfortunate, especially when you talk about the physical nature that can be involved in that, as well as the many men and women that are then taken out of their role of protecting and serving and following the more traditional things that we would ask them to do that fall in their job description versus following in this. And we know that it only escalates a situation when you, as you mentioned before, are involving an officer in a mental health situation. So thank you for being so transparent with that. And I really hope that we can take the time to look and see what other communities are doing. And if we can't find that, let's figure out a way to be a trailblazer. We work so well with EMU and JMU, and there's just a lot of great minds and open hearts in Harrisonburg. So I think we should be working towards taking advantage of all the investment that we're making in CSB now, millions and millions and millions of dollars into a building and giving them resources. It shouldn't turn around and then be taxing our HPD. So thank you so much.
So let me just add one quick thing. We just had a conversation today as well about having a conversation with a community conversation regarding what our role should be in the mental health calls. And again, a lot of it is what are our citizens expect of us? There's been some drastic changes in some ways that police departments handle mental health. Out in California, they don't even respond to suicide calls. If you have somebody that's suicidal and they get a call, they don't respond. And the reason being, and I know it sounds kind of drastic, but the reason being is that when we respond to something like that, and the person does have that issue, we're bringing weapons into that situation. And so the first thing that happens when you have somebody that wants to commit suicide, they approach us, what is our normal reaction going to be? It's going to be protect ourselves. And so instead of them doing it, we end up being looking like the bad guy because we have to use a weapon. And so those are just some drastic changes that a lot of agencies are making. And so we need to have some conversations with our citizens about what do you expect from the police department when a mental health call comes out? Because again, our role can vary. And again, we want to try to minimize that situation.
Thank you again. I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Vice Mayor, I think I saw you, and then Councilman Ball.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Chief, just a couple of things to go along with what has been said. You mentioned several of the boards that are fairly new, including the Community Relations Board, and you said you've met a few times. Can you walk us through what that board looks like as far as the process for sort of putting it together and the makeup of that group? You mentioned it was pretty diverse with as far as age and sort of demographics and that sort of thing. So can you share with us that, and then I'll have a follow-up questions after that.
Okay, the makeup is there are 2 black females, 1 black male, a white female, white male, 2 Hispanic females, and a male from the Muslim faith are the makeup of that board. We've only met once, and basically the way it came about is these are individuals that actually contacted me or my deputy chief after the George Floyd incident, and based on either their conversation or their email, I could sense the passion they had for making change. And I said, these are the individuals we need to include in this conversation. And so they are very in tune to seeing reform, police reform, which is very much needed. And that's why I figured we need to have a conversation with these individuals because they could be a positive influence on our organization. So that's how it came to be.
Thank you. The second question I have, I also appreciate the presentation. It was pretty much, there were a lot of things that I was not aware of that are happening, which I'm glad to hear about. Is there anything that you have in the works or has happened in relation to training for the officer when it comes down to implicit bias or sometimes called unconscious bias? There's lots of training that obviously, is done within the city, within different organizations and schools as well. So I'm just wondering if that is something, we've talked about this plenty of times, but I'm not really sure if that has happened or if there's any plans in the near future for this to happen for all of our officers and with the HPD.
So I will say they do get that training, but I will also preface it to say that we need more. There definitely needs to be more of that type of training, but they are required to go through bias training through in-service. But from what I know of that training, there needs to be a lot more in-depth detail as we talk about those type of things. And so there's ways we can improve it, and we actually already talked about that. How can we include that more so in our training? And that's going to be something we're going to be looking to add.
Thank you.
Councilman Ball?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I just want to say briefly, appreciate your sharing with us, appreciate your perspective. Hope you're not missing Richmond too much these days. We were glad to get you under any circumstances. And just want to quickly echo some of the other comments from my colleagues. Appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate the perspectives that you're bringing. Again, a lot of what we were hoping to get was, not being critical of people who were here or are still here, but advantages of some different perspectives, different backgrounds, just different types of departments. I think it's been a net positive, and again, echo comments that I've heard from my other colleagues that, and I'm getting a lot of that feedback from the community. So appreciate your openness, appreciate your sharing with us tonight, and you know, from my perspective, keep it up. If we can help with anything, let us know.
Thank you, and I appreciate you all support as well.
Councilman Hirschman?
Chief, you're doing good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, I think that one thing that I can actually say is, and I'm glad that you were here today, this evening, to present, because you do not brand yourself very well. There is a lot that this police department is doing and that people are not aware of. I mean, you mentioned how you've created boards and community boards and changed language and policies. And you are very transparent when people want to speak with you and ask you questions. You tell the information. And so that's doing nothing but building positive relationships between the police department and the community. I want to say that, I think everyone is very satisfied in having you here in Harrisonburg and having you as our chief. I can speak for my neighborhood alone. One thing that we were missing before, and I'm not trying to be negative about anything, but we were missing seeing our police officers in our neighborhoods and it being a positive thing. And so I can tell you that, my neighbors are thrilled when the officers are actually walking up the street and stopping by, sitting on maybe I shouldn't tell her this, but they sitting on the porch with us talking as they coming up the street.
That's a good thing.
It is. It's a good, warm feeling. And my neighbors always, in summertime, and we're always out on the porch, and here comes, an officer, and he'll come sit down. And that's what we're used to back when I was growing up here. We knew our police officers. We knew the Harry Moores. We knew them. They came by. They sat around and talked to us. And that's what builds positive relationships and trust. And we know that we can count on them. And so I just thank you. I am going to ask you a question that you might be hesitant to answer, but I know we've talked about this, about recruitment. What is your biggest challenge in recruiting Black and brown officers to Harrisonburg?
That's a great question. I think it's something that we got to continue to try to push forward on. But as I've mentioned to people, I think there's quite a few things that could go into play. One is that sometimes it's hard for people to come to an agency. You don't see people that look like you. Just being honest. It's just sometimes it's difficult for somebody to take that step. A lot of it, I don't think we've in the past really, like you said, sold our agency as well as we should. Because I do think that Harrisonburg is a hidden gem. I really do. I really feel that way. And then I think the other part is that sometimes you're competing against agencies that are much larger, and their pay is going to start a little bit higher than ours. So I think those are all elements that we have to take into consideration, and we got to find out ways that we can sell our agency a little bit better to overcome some of those obstacles. And right now, like I said, I created a recruitment unit. We've used a lot of social media in some of the areas that are very diverse in order to try to recruit. We just have not been successful yet. But we're going to continue to try to push forward to bring a more diverse group of individuals into our organization.
Thank you. Is there anything else from anybody else? All right. Oh, Councilman Jones.
I was just going to say, Madam Mayor, real quick to your point and to the chief's point, we probably should all work together, city council, along with Eric and the city staff, Eric and the police department, along with public schools and other departments, because we all keep having this same issue with who's going to be those lead individuals that are going to be the foundation and the cornerstones to to attract and bring other Black and brown individuals in the community to teach and to be firefighters and to be police officers and work throughout the city. So it seems like it's a marketing issue for everybody. So maybe at some point we should all consider getting in a room and trying to figure this out and work together versus doing it separately. So
yeah, that's
I know you've done some of that, and I've done some of it, and all of us have done something separately. But maybe we all work together along with, because JMU has the same issue, EMU has the same issue, Bridgewater. So let's all work together.
So one of the things we talked about with our community relations board, that is one of our goals in that board. We kind of talked about that last week. So Deputy Chief Camacho and myself have an individual that we're going to partner with. He's going to try to make some inroads into various communities. And what we're looking to do is not only have those community conversations with those various groups, but we're also going to try to recruit out of those groups. You know, those individuals that live here in Harrisonburg, the various groups, we're going to try to bring them, get them interested in law enforcement. And I know, you know, the times are very difficult now, but I think it's important for at least to try to make that effort because, again, I think those are the people that are going to represent your city in a positive way.
I agree. Okay, Chief, I think that's it. I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out this evening.
Thank you.